Oh, hello. Welcome once again to Stuff and Things, where I like to talk about stuff and occasionally even things. I'm your good friend Bradley, and today I thought we'd do kind of a fun, informal video. I've had several people ask me how I edit my digital photographs. As you may or may not know, if you've been watching the channel recently, you will know that I've been very into photography for the last year. I've been taking tons of pictures pretty much every single day, thousands of pictures. And over that period, and over years previously, I've kind of developed a look that I like for my digital photos. I shoot with a Fuji X100VI, which is right here. This is my main digital camera. I also use a Canon R6. That's what's filming this video right now. The Canon is usually used for nature, landscape, stuff like that. This is mostly used for street photography. I also shoot film sometimes too, but I wanted to talk about my digital process, what I do with my photographs when I am editing them digitally. Now for me, the basic objective is to make them not really look heavily edited. I want them to look as close to natural, or at least maybe a heightened version of natural as I can get them. There's this Instagram look that I see a lot that I don't really love. We'll get into that a little bit later. And I like to do things that are not so, I guess, obviously artificial. I like things to look as though you could have just seen this image with your eyes. I'm not saying that I do it well. I'm not saying that my method is better or worse than anyone else's, but this is just what I've developed through using Adobe Lightroom. That's my main editing software. And I just thought it would be interesting to show you what I do. And like I said, several people have asked me about it. So I have Adobe Lightroom up right now, and I'm going to show you several images that I have edited. This is my latest batch of images. So I had about 105 raw files. I shoot in RAW and JPEG, and then I usually edit the raw files. So I'm just going to show you the process for my black and white conversions, if I do black and white in digital, and then my color, well, not conversions, but just my color editing that I do. And again, the objective is for things to look natural. Black and white, obviously that's not natural, but again, I don't want things to look too stylized. I like them to look fairly natural. So we are going to start. Here is a color image. You shall see that it looks, I don't know, fairly bright, kind of punchy, not super contrasty, but this is the edited image. This is the raw image before editing. So you'll see that edited, raw, I haven't added much. I didn't really change the color profile or anything. I want the color to look as natural as it can possibly look, and I always shoot everything at the same white balance. I always do 5,000. So I do kind of like a daylight white balance or within that range, because I find if I'm constantly having my camera alter the white balance to whatever the conditions are, it makes everything look kind of the same, and then you can't tell, oh, it's an overcast day, so there'll be kind of more of a blue sheen over things, or a blue cast. Or if it's a really bright sunny day in summer, you might have more of kind of an amber or green cast over the image. But if you set the white balance to always change based on a sunny day or an overcast day or whatever, you'll find that everything kind of looks the same, and I don't like that. So I always shoot the same white balance all the time. I figure if I was shooting film, the white balance would always be the same. So if I'm shooting digital, I always have the white balance the same. So I never do like a picker here with the white balance, and then let's say I picked a white spot on the image and said, oh, that's white. You'll see now it looks a lot more amber. That's not what it looked like when I took this picture, so that's not what I want it to look like either. So I will undo that. This is how it looked. It was a little cooler when I took this picture. It's middle of winter. So colors pop a little bit more, add a little contrast, but for the most part, I'm not doing too much to this image. I did crop it quite a bit, and I'm totally okay with cropping because I have a 40 megapixel sensor on the Fuji X100VI. I'm taking these pictures surreptitiously much of the time. I'm trying to get in there and get the shot I want, but I can't always get close as close as I want without disturbing the people in the image. So with this one, I wanted to cut off the frame, or I wanted to cut off the top of this pinball cabinet in the frame and divide the frame up. I liked this as being the sort of central component in the image. I enjoyed her being delighted by seeing this pinball cabinet. This guy, I didn't even want in the picture. This guy, I liked having him, let's go back to the actual image, looking off frame and not really even being connected to what's going on the other side of the frame, as though this pinball cabinet is kind of separating these two people. So that was the cropping I was into. I'm not really worried too much about, you know, the rule of thirds or things like that. I might sort of line things up a little bit. I usually don't correct the tilt of the image at all. I like it to be kind of how I saw it. Again, this is about just trying to convey the moment that I captured in my camera without altering it too much. So basically, we do the cropping. If I take off the edit I did, you'll see that all I really did was I added a tiny bit of exposure. So just 0.1 stop of exposure, because I usually shoot about 1/3 of a stop underexposed on my Fuji. I added 40 contrast. Let me take that out. You'll see it just pops a little bit more. I don't want to go super contrasty like some people like to do. So I keep it right around 40, and this is a profile that I've made and then I tweak things. So this was something that I decided I like the look of this. I saved this as, I actually have it saved as Ultramax 400 number 4. It doesn't look anything like Kodak Ultramax 400, but that's what I was kind of trying to go for. And then I might tweak things as needed. Highlights, I usually take out a lot of the highlights. So I've got -65 on the highlights. If you pop it back, you'll see that it kind of blows that out. I don't necessarily mind if the highlights are blown out in the background, but I usually pull these back just because I like the look of that. And to me, it looks more natural. My eyes don't blow out the highlights when I see a scene, and so I don't want the camera to blow those out. Shadows, I'm usually going minus on the shadows. If I go back up to 0 as shot, you'll see maybe there's a little bit more detail in the shadows now, but I usually like to set that off a little bit. So it's usually around -20, again, depending on the scene. The whites I will put up. I have it set at +34 right now. Again, that's not doing too much, but it's just sort of bringing a little bit more dynamism to the scene. And then the blacks I've got set at -6. That's kind of to taste. It doesn't always sit there. And then I don't do too much else. So one thing that a lot of people do on Instagram is they will take this texture bar and they'll go way up with it. And on this image, it's not making that much of a difference, but you'll see this all the time. Let me go back to where it was. They will really over-texture their images, and it makes people look craggly and strange, and I guess it has this sort of heightened dreamlike quality to it when people do that, but I don't love that. I will put clarity up to +15. Again, if we go way up with that, you'll see that kind of Instagram-y look that I don't love. I like it to look as natural as possible. So yeah, around +15. I do a little dehaze, only +10. You'll see how that just kind of gets rid of, there wasn't really any light cast to this anyway, but I usually do about +10. That's just in the profile that I've saved. +15 with vibrance, +10 with saturation, just to make things pop a little bit more. But again, if I take that vibrance out, you're not noticing that much of a change. It's just a little bit to taste. Again, with the saturation, doesn't really change that much. Don't do anything to the tone curve. Don't do any sort of color grading. There's the sharpening mask, all that stuff. Don't really do anything with that. Lens corrections, I kind of let this go naturally. Remove chromatic aberration, enable profile corrections, and it has the Fujifilm X100VI in there. So if I take this off, you're not going to really notice anything. Profile correction, it might get rid of a little vignetting or something, but you're not going to notice much there. And that's about it. Again, for me, the big thing that I don't love is that Instagram look where they jack the texture way up. They might take some of the saturation out of the image too. And then they might do a little bit more clarity as well. And it just has this look that I don't like. I think a lot of people enjoy that on Instagram. I do not. So we're gonna put this back to where it belongs. Undo texture, undo all that. So here we go. This is my color image. This is how I edit color on my Lightroom profile, or this is kind of the profile that I've invented for Lightroom. Here's another example of an image I like quite a bit, and I had flash going with this photo, and these little kids are sheltering from the rain. I just wanted to show you an example of this, how my profile changes this image from the raw file. So again, not much. There's not a whole lot changed here. It's just kind of bringing in a little bit more contrast. It's kind of making the colors pop a little bit more. But to my eye, this is kind of as close to real life as I can get while still making it just maybe slightly heightened, but not doing too much. And that's pretty much what I do with color photographs in Lightroom. Pretty simple. It took me a while to develop this profile and get things to look the way I want, and it was kind of a cumulative process, but this is what I've come up with now, and this is what I really like. So I'll show you some black and white as well. So here's an image that I did a black and white conversion on, and I like this one just because it has this nice, large, happy family here in the background, and then there's a woman who looks as though she could be homeless, looking kind of, you know, down on her luck, contrasted with these people here. There's this guy in the background sort of staring intently at me in the camera. This woman here, there's just a lot of good faces, a lot of good humanity in this image that I liked. If I take off the profile that I placed on this, you'll get just the raw file in black and white. You can see it's not as contrasty, but not very different. If I take the image, let me take another one of these images. So this is one that I haven't edited, and I'll kind of show you what I may do. I might crop a little bit. So on this one, I did crop slightly, I think. Yeah, a little bit. I wanted her just at the very edge of the frame, almost as though she's about to walk out of the frame, but not too much, just cropped in a little bit. So on this one, if we were gonna do something similar, I might crop in a bit, get her towards the edge. Yeah, that's pretty good. I like her right about there. She's kind of the main part of the image. This guy here, yeah, I like that. And then I have a profile that I've built up called Tri-X2 that is supposed to look kind of like Tri-X, but I still don't like it exactly where I have it, so I need to alter this a little bit. But let's say we pop this. So this is just gonna, you know, change the saturation, or it's gonna take out all the color, and then it's gonna add, it added plus 60 contrast. I don't like that anymore. I'm taking it down to plus 30 with my black and white images now, because I've noticed that when I shoot actual Tri-X film, it's not anywhere near as contrasty as that was. The highlights are to taste, the shadows are to taste. The whites, I usually do a plus 34. Blacks, I go plus 14 a little bit. If I take that down, it just kind of adds a little bit more, I guess, tonal variation here. I also had grain on this originally, like a medium grain, I think. I usually take that down to a light. Then I do highlights. Again, it depends on what the background's doing and how everything is here. I might take these down a little bit more, just sort of to taste. I don't really need to see cloud detail. It's not necessary. I just might want to get a little bit more of the skin tone in here, so I might bring the highlights down to about, I don't know, -40 or so. The shadows, again, if I go to 0, that looks okay. I don't like this. I don't love that. So I may go to about -20, -15, just to kind of set off the lighter parts of the image. And then again, plus 15 texture. Here I do plus 20 clarity and plus 25 dehaze. So this is my black and white conversion. From there to there. And again, I think it just looks kind of naturalistic. It's not doing too much. It's not getting too crazy. I'm not jacking this texture bar way up and the clarity bar way up. That's what a lot of people do on Instagram now, and I hate it. I don't like it at all. It drives me crazy. So I'm gonna undo that, and I'm gonna undo that. And I think that's just like a nice, natural black and white conversion, in my opinion. Now I did do one, where is that image? where I did really blow out the highlights, and I thought I liked it. I did it on purpose for a stylistic reason. So I actually jacked the highlights up to +100. If I go to where I usually am in my images, where I'm like -50 or so, you can see that these branches now are a lot more visible around her. But I didn't like that. I wanted to set her off a little bit from the background. And so I did jack the highlights up. And that gives this sort of halo around her, and it makes it a little more, I don't know, the mood works a little bit better in my opinion. If I take off all of this profile, you can see these branches sort of reaching to her. Here, if I take it off, she's kind of set off more from the background. So there aren't any hard and fast rules. I'm not saying, oh, you always have to have some sky detail or some cloud detail, or you always need to get those highlights way down. It's whatever the picture needs to make me like the picture more, basically. And again, this isn't necessarily right or wrong. What does she have in her pocket there? I don't know. Something. It's not necessarily, there aren't rules. If it looks good, it looks good. This to me looks good. And so that is what I do for my black and white conversions. And again, it's just kind of per picture, it's just kind of to taste. And there are my color conversions. So just something naturalistic, something that doesn't look too overprocessed. Here's just a portrait of a woman who wanted her picture taken, so I snapped it for her. Again, you can just see the raw file and then the conversion. We're not doing too much. We're not adding too much to it. Here's a good example of something that I really tweaked with the shadow detail. I just wanted this to be mostly in silhouette. I wanted you to see the highlights on the barbed wire and then this sign. So if I put the shadows back to 0, you start seeing some more detail in this wall, and I didn't like that. So I went like that. Per picture, whatever works for the picture. But that is pretty much my process for editing color and black and white digital photographs. It works for me. It might not necessarily work for you, but that is what I do. If you guys have any questions, let me know in the comments below. I will be posting more photography-related videos in the future, but for now, until we meet again, I've been your good friend Bradley. You've been the audience. This has been Stuff and Things. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.